80% of asparagus that comes to the US is not grown in the US.
Hmm.
The farming cost is way too much to farm. American farmers can't farm as much. So they have hyper local farms. You won't, sometimes you see it, Michigan or different times of the year, you might see 1 or 2 months. But that hyper local of Michigan will stay in Michigan, will stay in Ohio. They won't ship that stuff down to Florida. They
Hmm.
won't ship it to California,
Right.
Idaho, another one, right? Small. But the farming cost has just come too much. So we require to have imports. We do not have imports just because of cheaper costs.
This episode of Grounded in Maine is sponsored by ESG Review. ESG Review magazine is published quarterly in February, May, August, and November, and is available for free in print and digital formats. ESG Review is devoted to environmental, social, and governance strategies, technologies, and investments. ESGreview.net is updated every Wednesday with 8 new stories and is home to feature articles, news items, and more. Visit esgreview.net to stay informed and help us spark the collaboration and awareness needed to develop sustainable economies and communities around the world.
There's a place where there's no trouble, no more pain, no more struggle.
Grounded in Maine podcast is an open conversation about how we show up for the world. I started this podcast out of a desire to learn new ways to be sustainable because the word sustainability is big. It can be overwhelming, and I just wanted to learn, different ways to try to be part of the solution and not feel like it's too late. So I'm talking to people who are doing different things and learning so much. I hope you are too. Y'all, you're going to hear this in just a moment, but I was listening to this again and I was like, Amy, you are such a goober. I introduced my guest, Pat Kelly, as the fruit industry podcast and the fruit industry business way too many times. In my defense, I was out of work for about 30 seconds and we were talking about fruit before I hit record. The produce industry podcast and the produce industry is his business. So don't look for him at the fruit industry podcast. Check out the produce industry podcast. You'll find Pat there. He does a podcast 5 days a week. Oh my goodness. That's all. I just wanted to say I apologize if that was confusing. Hi there. Thank you so much for listening to Grounded in Maine today. My name is Amy Bolduck, and my guest today is Patrick Kelly. Pat and I met at Podfest this past January, and he was doing a talk. And I actually there's an app that maybe it's not so short, but there's an app that we use for Podfest, and I had signed up for his talk, and I mentioned that I was really excited to learn from him, and so he was like, "Hey, you have a podcast about sustainability. We should talk about that?" And so we hooked up at Podfest and he was so nice because Pat has been doing this for years. You said year 5 so Pat has a podcast. He also has a fruit business, so his podcast is called the Fruit Industry Podcast. Very original. If I could only remember it on purpose. But Pat, thank you so much for being here. I'm thrilled to learn about the fruit industry and where you stand on things.
I appreciate that. And let's not forget about our vegetables too. It's not all about the fruit. We got some
Yep.
veggies in there,
Oh,
some
produce
asparagus.
industry.
The produce
I said
industry.
fruit,
I
didn't
like,
I? I said fruit industry
you did, but one thing I'm going to tell you is that
because
people
we were just
resonate
talking
with
about
that.
fruit.
Yeah, well, people resonate. When I tell people the produce industry, I've had people tell me, "What do you produce? Is it music? Is it this?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like produce, that word means so much more, right?" So, yes, the produce industry podcast, but I still get a lot of heat because I get producers and music industry that reach out and then they see my logo and they're like, what do you edit and rap about?" I'm like, "Wait, what?" Like, no, it's fresh produce. So, some of like my ads that I do, it just says the fruits and vegetable podcast and stuff like that, right? And people resonate to that with a lot more, right?
Oh gosh, that's funny. Funny.
Trust me, it is. I get it all the time.
Oh my gosh. So anyway, welcome. And so
Thank
the
you.
the produce industry podcast, you said is 5 years old and 700 and how many episodes?
We're over 700. The Monday show itself had like over 500, and then we have 5 different shows now. So we're not just one podcast. We manage 5 podcasts in the network.
That's crazy pants. So let's talk about how you got into this. So you were saying we talked about this way back, and then we were talking again because I wanted to make sure I was clear. But how did you get into the produce industry?
Great question. So obviously, my family, going back, my grandmother is an immigrant from Canada, and she came down to a little spot called Huntington Beach, California, from Edmonton, Alberta. She brought my dad and her kids down, and she worked at a grocery store. She was, she worked as a produce manager, a produce clerk, and she did that for her career when she moved to California. My dad worked at the same grocery store. My mom worked at the same grocery store. My dad's best friend worked at the same grocery store, which is like kind of like my uncle to this day, right?
Huh.
And yeah, so in the grocery business is where it started. And, chance happens, luck happens. My dad was stocking a shelf, and someone came up to him and was like, "Man, you're doing a good job. Would you ever think about working, for this company?" And this was a little company called Sara Lee. And so my dad ended up going to work for Sara Lee and got out of like the grocery business and started buying things like citric acid and orange marmalade. And then he went for work for another little company called Shasta Cola and started buying for their sodas and stuff like that. And then he met a few friends along the way and got into citrus farming and juicing. So as a kid growing up, listen, I can't remember a time where there wasn't frozen concentrated orange juice in our freezer. Like, I always laugh when I tell people, like, the freezer wasn't our freezer when we were kids. The freezer was my dad's with all of his orange juice samples and stuff in there.
Oh,
So
sure.
it's like, don't touch the freezer. And then we graduated. My dad got a freezer, like a freezer in the back room. And then no one could go in that next, right? Like, because it was all his samples. So he was always getting us to try orange juice and things. And then, when I was younger, I wanted to make money. So dad was like, get in the grocery business, right? Started in grocery, but then my dad would say, "Hey, I've got some opportunities. Would you guys like to come out and pick oranges over the summer?" So we did, right? Because that was a way. My dad had his own business then. He worked for other companies, but then my dad was an entrepreneur. And so we would pick oranges for my dad's business. And that's kind of how it started. And then I say when we became of age, right? Like actual like 18, my brothers worked for my dad. And then I went to work for my dad, working at a packing house and really focusing on oranges, citrus, right? And my dad had been in citrus now for 20 plus years. It's all we knew. And so that's kind of how it started. And then I worked for my dad as a manager in training, and I just saw something different, right? I really grabbed hold of it. I loved being in the community. I loved being on top of trucks and in the field and on tractors, and it was really fun for me. And it grew on me to a point where I wanted to be so involved. And I was for many years. I owned my own produce companies. I've owned brokerages. I've imported, I've exported. I've been, I studied in China, so I have a degree from Hong Kong Baptist University. And everything was about fruit to me. Like, I was like, oh my God, pineapples from Costa Rica, watermelons from Honduras. Where does it all come from? Where does our food come from? And then when I put myself through college, every single report, everything, single project, I just made it about fruits and vegetables, right? So it made me do so much more research. As the other kids were like going, I'm going to do a report on Starbucks, I would be like, can I do a report on Dole or Del Monte? Right. So
Of course.
I just put myself in it and really immersed myself into it. And that led to my career. Right. So I'm 40 years old, but I'm 20 years in this industry. And if you go to when I was 15 picking oranges, I'm 25 years in this industry and I'm only 40 years old.
Mhm.
So it's a passion for me. It's not a career. It's not a job. It's a legacy. It's something I'm building. My grandmother built, my dad built, I built, and nothing was handed me. My dad says to me, "I'm self-made, so go out and self-make yourself." So there's no silver spoon. There's no dad helping me. There's no nothing. My dad is a high school educated immigrant, and he made it, right? And so I'm a college educated firstborn American, right? and it's all self-made. As like I said, it might not be a self-made, not a millionaire, but for sure self-made in what we've done.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's amazing. I love I love that it's a family thing, that it's just, like the passion has been passed down, because I think that so often, especially in a field such as, farming or grocery or something like that, if parents are into it, the kids are like, yeah, no, like it looks like you're working really hard and I don't want that. But I love that you got that bug, and you not only got the bug, you took it and you ran. Like you just built the crap out of that.
Full sprint. My dad told me to slow down many times. He was mad at me for a few years, and vice versa, because I didn't do what he told me to do. Right? Like he was like, stay under the radar. I was like, absolutely not.
Under the
Right. So
radar.
keep your nose clean, as the baby boomers would say. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. I don't care what that means. I'm like, but I'm getting wet. I'm going deep, right?
Ah,
So I did. And again, like it's different, right? And it's taken my father a lot of years, even when I started the podcast, he was like, man, be careful. Don't be giving away too much intellectual property, different things. And now we're about 3 years into the podcast. He was like, man, I'm proud of you, man. This is crazy. Like I never thought that I would walk into a place and someone would be like, is your son Patrick Kelly? Like, and I always laugh because I'm like, he's like, he doesn't understand that. Like, he's like, what's LinkedIn? My dad doesn't know what LinkedIn is. He doesn't know any of that. So when people go to him like, oh, I follow your son on LinkedIn, he's like, he had no idea what that meant before. He had no idea. So now it is. It's fun. And, I've done a conference with my dad this last year, and it was fun. It was fun. That same story I told you about Sarah Lee, I got to watch and listen to him tell that story as well.
oh my
And
gosh.
it was great to hear him tell that story, because I've heard that story so many times. But now we're out in a conference and they're like, this is your son? And he starts saying, well, yeah, let me tell you how it got. And he tells this story. And I'm like sitting there like,
That's amazing.
just wide eyed, like, yep,
Yes,
that's my dad. And then don't get me wrong, my dad and I have had many problems. Like, we've butted heads for many years. Didn't talk for 5, 6 years at one point, just because we were at different points in our careers, and it happens, right? But yeah, I mean, he gave me, I always tell him today, I said, thank you so much. And he's like, for what? And I said, you gave me the stepping stone to where I am today. And then now he says, everything you've done over the last 15 years has made you the person you are today. So it's very fun to be able to do that. And with the average male only living to 74 years old, my dad's 70. I hope to spend, as much time as possible if he's the average, male. But like my buddy's dad just died at 75, and, second generation in produce. And yeah, so it's like, it's something I'm building out. And if my kids get into it, awesome. If they don't, I understand, right?
Right. Well, yeah, and someone will take it over. But that's so cool that your dad got to be in the spotlight. I think that's really cool that you brought him there, and then you got to listen to him tell the story
Oh, it was great. It
and
was
have
great.
the light on him and just, tell stories. I mean, because there's so many people that like they light up when the light is on them, and they're like, let me tell you the stories because I got stories. And so I just want to say, so you said that you said you called Sara Lee a small company, and you called Shasta Soda a small company, but they must have been small when he came on.
You got to remember, this was the
They grew.
70s.
Everything was small.
Yeah, and then you gotta, I say small because he went to work for the largest commodity broker in the world. My dad ended up being the vice president of sales for a large company called Lewis Dreyfus Citrus. And I always tell people, I go, you guys know the name, and people go, never heard of it. And I go, you've never heard of Lewis Dreyfus? And they go, never. I go, really? You've never heard of Julia Louis Dreyfus? Julia Louis Dreyfus was on Seinfeld.
Hmm.
And Julia Louis Dreyfus is the granddaughter of Louis Dreyfus Citrus.
Oh,
So it's that obviously is the largest commodity broker in the world: coffee, beans, oil, FCOJ. So my dad always has that, and he still said, little company called Sara Lee. So I tell it how exactly my dad tells it.
yeah. I love that. I love that. And so she was one of those people that did not want to take, follow the path.
Yeah,
Did
hundred
her own
percent.
thing. So that says so much about you and your dad also, how he kind of taught you
how important that is, and that you saw what he was doing and you were like, I'll do that. That's good. I'm gonna
I got
do that.
pictures from when we were children. I'd have my dad's tie on, I'd have his shoes on, and I'd have his briefcase. I used to get in so much trouble touching his briefcase. I even have the old, phone, corded phone inside of his briefcase. And I always said to my mom said, she goes, as far back as I can remember, Pat would walk around and just be like, I want to be the boss. I want to be like, it didn't matter, right? It was just like I went to work with my dad on Saturdays, right? I was that kid. And I think it was more or less I wanted to spend time with him more than it was work because I was the baby in the family. And so I would go to work with him on Saturdays. I'd wake up at 5 in the morning just to go to work with him on Saturdays. And I would sit on this typewriter, and I would type stories up for his secretaries and his other people, and I'd leave them on their desks. So when I became of age, I started seeing all the people, right, that when they were, probably 30, I'm now seeing them when I'm 20 in their 40s, and now I'm 40 and I'm seeing them in their 70s. So I have people now that have known me since I was 12 years old.
Right.
Some of my first customers were some of my dad's customers.
Right. Oh my
So
God.
it's kind of cool.
That's very cool. That's very cool. So tell us about produce. Like, what should we know about produce?
Oh my gosh. If I was to tell you one thing, I always tell everybody, know where your produce comes from. There's different types of produce. There's local, there's hyper local, and there's imports. So when you think of local, what would you think local means?
I mean, until you said hyper local, I was thinking like farmers. But so, I mean, I would say grocery store.
Hey, great answer. Okay. No, not at all. So local produce.
Good answer. No.
But it is. It's a great answer because it shows the point of that the average consumer doesn't understand where their food comes from.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at fresh produce, local technically is the United States. That's local to us, right? Because it stays within the United States. Florida citrus, right? Texas,
Right.
asparagus out of Michigan. That's all local for us, right? Hyper local is going to be your 10-acre farms that are going to the farmers markets and things like that. Your Florida tree ripened mangoes that don't leave Florida, right? That's that hyper local. The USA produces billions and billions of dollars of fruits and vegetables that stay in the US and get exported.
Mm-hmm.
But I always say comments like this. If you were to think of asparagus, where do you think asparagus comes from? Like, where would you say, like, okay, I said Michigan, so you have an idea there.
That's what I was going to say. You said Michigan, so I would say Michigan.
I would not know. Right? 80% of asparagus that comes to the US is not grown in the US.
Mm-hmm.
The farming cost is way too much to farm. American farmers can't farm as much. So they have hyper local farms. Sometimes you see it, Michigan, or different times of the year, you might see 1 or 2 months. But that hyper local of Michigan will stay in Michigan, will stay in Ohio. They won't ship that stuff down to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
They won't ship it to California.
Right.
Idaho, another one, right? Small. But the farming cost has just come too much. So we require to have imports. We do not have imports just because of cheaper costs. People say to me all the time, they're like, well, you farmers and you people, you just want to bring in all this cheap stuff. And I go, it's not cheap.
There's nothing cheap about it.
It's not cheap. It wasn't cheap 20 years ago. It's not cheap now. But could you imagine a day going to a grocery store and seeing asparagus out of stock for 4 months, apples out of stock for 2 months, right? All these different things. It wouldn't work. The grocery store would be out of business, right? I mean, think about it. So I always challenge everybody to know where your produce comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to have imports. It is okay, but we got to focus on local farmers first, which is USA, right? We are USA. We are Americans. And so we want to make sure that we get American produce in American bodies, in their tummies, right?
Right.
So just look, do your research. During the summer, it's summer citrus from South Africa, Australia, Chile, Peru, Uruguay. Why? Because there's no domestic citrus.
Mm-hmm.
And there's regulations on where citrus can travel to during the summer in state.
Oh, okay. That's a really good point.
Bugs, pests, there's things. So Florida citrus can only
then
go
like refrigeration, right?
No, refrigeration, we got it. That's a cold chain. That's fine. But you got to remember There's bugs out there, there's pests that certain states have, so you can't cross borders with it. We
Yeah.
got to keep it within certain areas. You know what I mean? So, or food safety guidelines. It's so expensive to get the USDA to approve certain farms. So you're a little 5 acre farm, you might have to pay $35,000 or more or less to get your farms audited.
Oh,
So I always say like American farming is the hardest job, not just American farming, all farming, right? It's the hardest job in the world. Our,
yeah.
our country, our world was founded on agriculture and land.
Mhm.
Without food, without water,
You got nothing. We're
you
not
got
here.
nothing.
Yeah.
Wars are started over land, resources, food, and love.
Wow. So can you tell me this is I'm stuck on the fruit like shipping fruit. So you said the USDA like bugs and stuff like that, but so do the when the fruit comes from Chile or Uruguay or wherever from out of the country, are there guidelines?
100%.
Okay.
100%. They have to meet a US standard that is either good, just as safe as ours or better.
Okay. And who regulates that?
The United States. So the USDA will actually send people down to farms in other countries to literally monitor them. There's something called the GFSF. It's a global food safety initiative, right? That it's global. So we have a standardized food safety system that if you want food in the US, you got to pass the safety with like an A or better,
Oh,
right? Your
that's good to
food,
know.
yeah, your food has to be fancy. It's got to be, you got to pass water requirements, right? Your groundwater gets tested, your well water gets tested, your soil gets tested, right? To make sure there's the right nutrients in there. One of the biggest things is Florida was used to be the largest crop of citrus
Yeah.
anywhere. They're less than 12 million boxes from a state of 40 years ago. They were probably 100 million boxes. That crop is declining because of a bug called Hong Long Bing, the Asian citrusillid. Guess where it came from? Okay. So we had different restrictions or different, we were very loose on requirements back in the 60s and 70s and things like that. There was war going on, there was things, and people needed food.
They were just distracted. Yeah.
So a bug got over here and it loves the citrus tree and it kills citrus.
Oh my.
Now it's in Florida, it's in Texas, it's all throughout California, and it's killing our trees, right? So I always call it, and this is the craziest way to say it, it's like HIV for citrus. It's
Mhm.
a bug, but once that bug gets on the tree, it integrates into the tree's DNA, and it starts to die.
Wow. Wow. Oh my gosh. Um, so I'm gonna go sort of off topic, but like I have a jam business, sort of. And I when I first started, I was it was May and June is strawberry season in Maine. And so I was like, oh, I couldn't get enough strawberries to get started. And so I was looking at the grocery store, like even distributors, like fruit distributors, and all the fruit was coming from I'm trying to remember where the countries were, but I know like in the grocery store I could buy a 5 pound bag of frozen strawberries that but it came from Serbia. I'm like, how do I know if that's any good? So that's really interesting to hear that from you. And so in that, like I started really slow and I ended up going, there's a strawberry farm that's like several acres in like half an hour away from where I lived. And so I would go there before I went to work and I would pick for 45 minutes and then I would drive back and I would
Mhm.
work all day. And then after work, I would wash these strawberries, freeze them, and then the next day do it again just to get it was sort of like
You're like, it's the freshest. I know where it's coming
right?
from.
Exactly. Like personally I'm saving money. Like it's half off for me to pick it myself, except for the gas part. But um and then I called it quality control. Like I get, I'm picking the very best berries and whatever. But that was, that's how I had to do it because I was like, I don't know about Serbia strawberries. Are they in season?
Well,
I don't even know.
most produce hit seasons, right? The only things that I'll blow your mind on is apples and onions are normally picked 8 to 9 months ago, and they're stored all year long and shipped throughout the year, right? Um, Mostly everything else is completely fresh. It has to be, right? Pineapples, as soon as they're picked, start breaking down. They don't ripen more; they break down, right? They get
Right.
mold on them, they start to die. So I always tell everybody, like, I'm in the living organisms business, right?
Sure.
Because it's perishable. So what we do has to be moved and consumed very quickly.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, that's a tough business.
It is.
Like
But
you can't sleep on that.
there's no plastics, there's no widgets, like it's not shirts, it's not something that can last. Like we're selling inventory daily, right? And then if it doesn't get moved, you got to send it to a processor, you got to send it to food banks, like you got to get rid of it. Like
Yeah.
you can't just hold it for months and go, we'll see what happens. No, it's gonna start spoiling.
Yeah, well, can we pull on that a little bit? Like how where does your produce come from? Does it come from do you get it from the other countries and stuff like that? I mean, I always try when I'm buying fruit, or produce, I always try for US.
Yeah, I mean, of
If I
course you always
can't
want to
find
go
it at the
US.
farmer's market.
So like our business, I mean, we're California citrus, right? So my staple is California citrus, Florida citrus. I'm in citrus, right? So do we have imports? Of course we do, right? But my staple is California and Florida. But then during the summer months, 100% Chile, Peru, Uruguay, South Africa, Australia. But
Grapes come
traditionally,
from Peru, I see.
yeah, grapes as well. Yeah, but I try to stick local as much as possible. But I also understand that I'm not going to stop buying citrus because it's from a different country. I have to support our industry and our people.
Right,
You know, if I was like, oh, I'm not going to buy imports, then I would never eat asparagus, right?
right. Or
Some of this,
grapes.
so grapes are only, you got to think about it. Grapes from California are only July, August, September, October, November. Then you switch to Mexico.
Right.
Then you switch to Chile, right? So, or vice versa. Sorry. Then Chile during the wintertime because it's counter seasons, right? Chile has the same climate as California. So they have the same growing region, the same climate, right? So their grapes counteract or complement our off season. And
Mm,
then Mexico, the same. Mexico will complement grapes being done in Chile, and then they start coming up through Mexico.
okay.
Again, if you only wanted US, you would only have grapes 4 to 5 months out of the year.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, and I've had many conversations with people that say seasonal eating is best for us, but there's also, people that are like, I want what I want.
I disagree with seasonal
Especially
eating.
like, strawberry, the chocolate covered strawberries for Valentine's Day and,
Oh
whatever.
yeah, those are imports.
Oranges in your yeah, right? Yeah, they're definitely not from the US.
I mean, listen, I am huge on seasonal. I love getting a seasonal tangerine. I love that kind of stuff. But staple items, peppers, onions, asparagus,
For
like
sure.
all the stuff that like you would eat in a regular day. What does chicken taste like without mixing it with onions and peppers and all that? Tastes like chicken, right? Chicken don't taste really good without it being seasoned with onions and peppers and things like that, right?
Lamb.
So think about a life that you would live being very vanilla, just plain vanilla all day long. So imports allows that to happen.
Mhm.
I support imports because you also got to remember too, some of these importers are third, fourth generation that migrated from the Netherlands over to New York. And then we're in New York and they started these businesses in 1848, 1890. And they have generations of generations. And I said, how did your business start? And he goes, it actually started in the Netherlands when our great great grandfather was a grower of potatoes and different items. And we would trade and barter with local people.
Mm,
Well, when the wars started happening, right, when you fast forward, he goes, we migrated over to the United States. He goes, and what we did was we took that great produce from over there and we imported it to here. And we've been doing that for 100 years. And I'm like, holy cow,
hmm.
right? So you got to remember our country is founded on immigrants. Our country was founded on doing things that were not the way the British wanted us to do it,
Right.
right? You know that being in Boston. You know how many times I've thrown that tea over at the Boston Tea Party Museum? I've done it 2, 3 times, right? But it also, if you go to the Boston Tea Party Museum, it'll tell you how much citrus was imported during those days as well.
Mm-hmm.
Produce was a huge part. Tea is a part of produce. So it comes from other places. And these immigrants have built a legacy of supplying produce to us, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Pretty cool, huh?
Very cool. Yes. I'm very curious. So as you were starting this business, so your dad was a farmer when you started doing this.
Don't tell him that.
Citrus farm. He worked for a citrus farm.
He worked for, well, yeah,
Okay. That's not a farmer. Okay.
it's not, right? It's crazy to say the least. So, like, if you were to ask my dad, he'll tell you, I'm not a farmer, but
Okay.
has he owned packing houses? Yes. Has he been on the ranch? Yes.
Okay.
But yeah,
Not a farmer.
yeah, my dad won't claim that at all. I
Okay.
mean, I kind of don't claim it, but I claim I'm in the farming community, right?
Right. Yeah, yeah, agricultural,
I've
whatever.
never grown
Call it
anything
what you want,
myself.
everyone. But okay, so your dad was working on a farm, and that was what you saw growing up, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean,
And
we had a little acreage of avocados and apples and stuff when we grew up in San Diego, so that's what I remember.
yeah, so how did you start your business? Like how do you get these connections to get to find the fruit? Like how do you do that?
A lot of research. I remember just going on Google back in the days, and this is like 2005, and being like, citrus packing houses here, this, and this. But the biggest thing on that, what I learned over time is there's associations for everything, just like Podfest, right? So these associations, the California Citrus Mutual, the California Citrus Growers Collective. So I started finding these collectives, and that's where you find it, right? The USDA has import lists, right? So you can go and you can find who the importers are, things like that. So I just did a lot of research, and then I did the craziest stuff where I just started flying out of country and then just finding people,
Right?
right? I'd go to Costa Rica, I'd go to Honduras, I'd go to Mexico, right? And then I worked for a couple of companies, right, that expanded that even more. So, yeah, it is. It's crazy. And I started my business off of back, and I've had not the same business as I had back in 2009, but I started businesses pretty much off of relationships. So someone would call me and say, "Hey, do you do grapes?" I'm like, "No," and they're like, "Man, I could use a new grape supplier." I'm like, "I'll find it." And then I
Right.
would go find people that had grapes, and I would start selling grapes, and I started selling watermelons, and I started selling pineapples, and I started doing other things. I would find it, right? And a lot of it had to do with Google. A lot of it had to do with just straight, I would say, grit of just calling people and saying, "Hey, like, I noticed you guys had grapes. Where do you get that from?" Or going and getting bags off the shelf. On the back of the bag, it says packed by. I would start calling those people.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I love that you just have that grit, Pat, that you're just like, I'm gonna find him. Like,
Yeah. I always say, like, my dad, he screwed me up because my dad said, if you can make 100 grand for yourself, you can make 500,000 for yourself. So don't work for anybody else if you can do it. So I've always had a mindset where I was like, listen, my dad paid me $35,000 a year when I started for him. And he goes, if you sell and you do this, I'll give you a commission. So within 6 months, I made $88,000.
in commissions.
And he was like, I can't pay you. This is too much. I didn't think you were going to do this. Right. And he actually had to give another manager at my job a raise because I was making more than her, and she was there for 10 years.
Right.
So yeah, it's just
You're
I
just
had
motivated like nobody else.
I just had a passion for produce, and my thing wasn't proven to anybody. I just saw like, hey, I can make $88,000. And then my dad and I split working with my dad, and I started my own business. And first year in business, we did almost $900,000 in sales and grew it all the way up to about $8 million in sales. And we had a great time. Right. And I got rid of that company. I always say I sold it because my brother took half of the assets, started his own company, and I shut that company down. And then I went to work for a Fortune 200 company for a couple of years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it's been fun, right? So I've owned four businesses in my career, but I've had two jobs.
That's awesome.
It's been amazing.
I remember the thing that I was going to bring up. And I don't, maybe you can answer it, maybe you can't, but this is just something that it's stuck with me so deeply. Uh,
when I was in Maine, I heard that was it like 90% of the produce that is grown, the food that's grown in Maine is exported. Something like that. It's like maybe 80% or but like most of the food that is grown and raised in Maine is exported. And that means that we have to like import everything. But I know that like, California produces most of the greens like lettuces and stuff like that. Salinas, California. Um, but like I just can't really wrap my head around how that works. It just sounds so dumb to me.
So let's look at this. And I always say like I'm gonna cheat a little bit, okay?
I could tell you were doing that.
I'm cheating right now because I'm looking it up. I'm a big research guy. So if you look at it going back to 2022, Maine produced probably 18.4 million. That's hundredweight potatoes. That means they ranked what, like ninth in the nation. So that's 4.6% of US's output, right? They grow blueberries, right? They're 90 to 105 million pounds of blueberries. They do dairy, they do eggs, they do poultry. Other crops are hay, seaweed, commercial fisheries, right? So there is a lot, right, that happens. Now, to what I know is if they export it, it means there's just not a market because of labor and things like that. But I would assume that you do go to local and regional markets. So you're going to probably see them at your farmers markets. You're going to see local retailers and co-ops, right? You will
Right.
because they're there, right? But yes, a lot of fruit gets exported. I always just tell people I lived in California, and sometimes out of the years I never saw some of our California fruit because that got exported to Korea.
Right.
Because guess why? Americans don't want to pay $40 a box for grapes.
Yeah.
Koreans will. So
Mm.
what's more important, keeping the farm alive or selling it you're under your break even,
Yeah.
right?
Oof. That's hard, man.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, for
Just
sure.
completely crazy. So I would say, doing a little bit of research, export is part of it, but it's only a small part of it. You still have farmers markets, grocery, food service, processing. Export is one of them as well. But again, if they're exporting, it means that's where their market is.
Okay.
It's okay. We want to support Maine and make sure Maine farmers get paid the right amount of money for their products.
Yeah, true story. All right. I guess I have to deal with that. I mean, I'm not in Maine anymore, so it doesn't affect me, but it bugged me that that was the case. I'm like, you hear about so many people that are hungry and they just can't.
I know.
But
It breaks my heart too because I was in Milwaukee a couple weeks ago and I spoke at an event. I was walking down the street in my suit and I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go speak at this event. I'm so happy." The National Grocers Association, and I saw tents on the side of the road with kids playing toys and I was like, I gotta go offer them something. Like I'm in the food industry. Like, can I buy you some food? Like, right? Like, it breaks my heart. It does. It really breaks my heart.
yeah. So can you give us some sort of an update on the produce industry right now? Like, I know there have been a lot of changes with
It's crazy.
everything.
You know, I can't speak for the industry when I say this. I mean, this is just, my opinion. But, I told someone the other day, they said, "What do you think's happening?" I said, "We're in a time where it's not time to be resilient anymore." When we went through COVID, we were being resilient. What's going to happen? How are things going to happen? We learned very fast that nothing came back to what it was before COVID. Nothing has changed. Everything changed.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing has stayed the same since COVID. It's constantly evolving with tariffs, geopolitical issues. Um, I mean, geez, we bombed Iran, right? Like, there's so much going on. And so I always say, like, the produce industry needs to be proactive, and we are. So we're making sure that our exports go to the right countries. We're making sure that if we have local, then we're creating local opportunities. If it's hyper local, we're making sure that there's hyper local in local grocery stores and independent grocery stores, right? We're making sure that your food is safe. We're making sure that we're testing, right? We're doing a little bit of innovation. So, in the state of the industry and right now, we're being very proactive and making sure that your costs in the store are fair, right? But one thing I'll tell you is that a farmer today is getting paid the same amount of money they were getting paid in 2015 for their fruit.
Right.
So
Because the
the
cost
diff
of living has exploded.
right?
Yeah.
Inflation has killed trucking, logistics, supply chain. So that middle percentage is just driving it crazy, which is causing our products to go up. Our products are not high in the stores because of imports.
Hmm.
That's not true at all, right? Imports are expensive, don't get me wrong,
Right.
but it's the cost in the United States that's making it. Labor, right? Remember, in California, minimum wage is like $18 an hour. So think about it, that same box. So we should be able to increase our box price, right? We should be able to increase sales. By doing that, though, that means the retailer has to increase their price, right? And sometimes they don't want to do that.
Right.
So we have to come to those fair mediums to say, hey, we need to supply fresh produce, quality produce, and consistent produce, right? And tariffs and everything that we're going through doesn't help, but we're doing the best we can. And the goal is to keep American farmers alive, steady, healthy. But that's also why American farmers are also the importers as well. So people that grow asparagus here in the United States are also asparagus importers as well, right? So when you think of food coming into the country, you think, oh, wait, why are we accepting food from Chile? Well, guess what? That food that's coming from Chile is imported by an American company that is just trying to extend their shelf life and put money back into the farm.
Mm.
So being proactive, understanding, that we need to do a job of feeding America. And I think that's what it comes down to, right? And I say, like, I speak for myself, but we're being proactive and we're creating opportunities and we're making sure food gets there fast, fresh, and consistent.
Wow. I feel like in so many instances, like education is just so important. Like it's like a super important part of it. And so that was super helpful for me to hear. So thank you very much for that, Pat. Uh, just because there's so many times when, I mean, I know I mentioned that, seasonal eating and stuff like that, but I always say, know where your food comes from and, support your farmers, that type of thing. But this is really helpful as well. Just know that, if something is imported, there's a reason for that and that there are regulations for that, which I was like, I don't know what they're doing over there. And maybe it's cheaper over there, and maybe the labor is not really right or whatever.
No,
But
they're like, of course, labor out of country is always cheaper. Mexico labor is going to be cheaper. That's why we have immigrant farm workers. That's called the H-2A program. But we bring immigrant farm workers from Mexico, from other countries to pick our fruit. Americans won't pick their own fruit. Latino hands helps your fruit get to the stores.
for sure. Uh, all right. So is there? I don't want to take up too much of your time, but like, is there a specific message that you want to share, above and beyond what you've already given? And then I want to make sure to ask you about sustainability.
Yeah, listen, my message has always been the same, right? And I keep it very consistent, right? You've heard me say that a lot. Is support local growers, support farmers, support your community. One of the biggest things is we like to not support a community, and when I say that, and this is the best example I can give. I live on off a highway. They call it a highway. It's a street. It's called Gun Highway. I drive Gun Highway every single day to my office, back to the grocery stores. And I always laugh when people get road rage on Gun Highway because I'm like, everybody that travels Gun Highway lives within this little circle. That's our community. Those are our people.
Right.
So my message is always be in your community, know your community, know your growers, know your farmers, know your produce managers, know your people. And that will help better educate you on the things that you're doing, the food that you're consuming, and get you more educated when someone says to you, hey, I wouldn't buy that. And you can go, wait, hold on. This is why I do. You might not want to buy chili asparagus, but if an American grower is importing that because the costs are too high for their farms and they're sustaining those by importing, I would support that grower.
Mm-hmm.
So support your community, support your independent grocers, and know where your food comes from.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you so much. And so, Pat, what does the word sustainability mean to you?
Sustainability, as always, a buddy of mine said this to me. He asked me this years ago, and I had no idea. I was like, well, it's like plastic and stuff like that. Are we, doing this? No. Sustainability to me means leaving the world, the earth, better than what I saw it. And that's what I would say. So, you
Whatever.
know, if I see a piece of paper on the ground, I pick it up. Um, I go out of my way to make sure of that, right? So that's what sustainability means to me, is leaving the world that I'm in today a little bit better than what I lived in it.
What more can I say? That's that is that's amazing. And I'm a little teary now. I mean, it's so simple and it's so profound at the same time. And I'm here for all of that. So Pat, what is the best, how can people find you, follow, learn more about what you're doing, listen to the podcast? My gosh, we didn't talk about the podcast. So
Totally okay.
the produce industry podcast, like what do you want to say about that? I mean, you
Listen,
could have 5 podcasts through
my
that.
son tells me, Dad, if you ever tell someone to subscribe to your channel, I'm gonna kill you. And I'm like, oh my God, what? Right? Because Alpha generation, they're not about like, oh, subscribe today. My thing is this: if you wanna learn more about fresh produce, the Produce Industry Podcast is the official voice of the produce industry, and it's a lot of B2B. It's a lot of real talk. It's not a bunch of influencers, trying strawberries and doing that. It's real, like, right? So if you want to know where your fruits and vegetables come from, yeah, check us out, the Produce Industry Podcast with Patrick Kelly, which is me. Our Tuesday show is the history of fresh produce, which we talk about history, how it was cultivated, when it started, when was it commercialized. I mean, citrus goes back almost 8 million years, if you think about it. If you go back to the Egyptians. So we talk about a lot of that, right? If you want to know really where your fruit came from. The Wednesday show is the Global Fresh series with Juanita Gallio. 40 years of this woman being in the industry. She traveled the world, and guess what? She talks with all global suppliers, global people, global companies. And then our Thursday show, which is about women, the produce industry is male dominated by the old white man. I'm afraid to become older because I'm so afraid that I'm going to be put in that category, right? So we have a series that's called Global Women, right? Global Women's Fresh. And we have women leaders that talk about their journey through fresh produce and being in farming, right? And how they've overcome all of these things together. And then Friday is Fresh from the Field Fridays. What's fresh, what's in the field, and what's coming to your grocery stores. So if you want to check us out, like I said, the Produce Industry Podcast, the Produce Industry Network. And if you want to know downloads on like real produce, aglifemedia.com. I run a news media station for our industry. And so you can learn so much about the agriculture world on aglifemedia.com.
That's crazy pants. All right. And that's your website, Ag Life Media.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the stuff that's all Patrick's stuff is there.
Everything.
Okay. Well, so I mean, you guys, I really encourage you to check out the podcast on any of the days, Monday through Friday, and learn literally about the produce industry. And you are on Instagram.
I am.
Do you do it? Nothing
So we have
crosses my feed.
we have the Produce Industry Podcast on Instagram. We've got, and then I'm the Patrick Kelly 85. But yeah, we're YouTube, the Produce Industry Podcast. I think Instagram's the Produce Industry Network. I think we changed it just because it started to grow a little bit. Now you're going to make me check.
Well,
Yeah, the Produce Industry Network on Instagram. And then we do a lot of cool videos of grocery store trips, like top 5 produce items for October. We do a lot of how to pick the perfect peach, how to pick the perfect melon. So our Instagram is more related to like the consumer side. So yeah, if you want to learn how to pick the perfect peach, I'll show you how.
that's awesome. Cool. Thank you so much, Pat. I appreciate this a lot. And my goodness. So we've been talking about this since January. My goodness.
We made it happen.
But we did it. We did it. And so Patrick Kelly, thank you so much for sharing all this information. This is so, I mean, everything is so new and everything is changing so much right now.
Yeah.
And of course, produce has been around forever and ever, but there's so much, like I said, there are just so many changes, and it's good to know like what's happening in that world because, like I always say, know your farmer, know where your food comes from. Well, where does the food come from? And so this is really helpful. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you having me, and I'm always a fan of sharing the knowledge that I learned from all of my guests on the show.
Awesome. All right. Patrick Kelly, you guys check him out. Listen to the podcast, the Produce Industry Podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
I just want to take a second to thank my guest again for speaking with me and sharing such great information. I love having these conversations with folks. I also want to thank Buzzsprout for hosting the podcast, for Jane Bolduck and her music genius, for Becca Coffron and her award-winning artwork. And thank you for listening. I appreciate that so much. Please check out the show notes for any links and extra information. And if you would like to follow my guest and find out more about them, I'm sure they would love the follow. And if you don't mind leaving a rating or review wherever you're listening, and just help to get this podcast in front of new eyes, that would be amazing. I would really love that. And feel free to reach out to me on the socials and let me know what you're thinking. And if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please let me know that. I would love to have a conversation with you about sustainability. All right. Thank you again. I hope you have a great rest of the week.
There'll come a day, my mama told me, when I find love to have and hold me, a heart that's strong and so sincere. Just tell me, how do I get there from here? Oh, tell me, how do I get there from here? 'Cause here and now I'm so far down that mercy's bound to find me. We'll find a way to soothe the sickness. We'll heal the ache with sweet forgiveness. Wages of war will disappear. Just tell me, how do I get there from here? I wonder, how do I get there from here? Yeah, 'cause here and now I'm so far down and mercy's bound to find me. When that state of grace has finally found me, well, there'll be music, ooh, and good friends around me, yeah. And I'll just smile through happy tears and wonder,